Hello from Columbus, Ohio. I'm Scott Foltz alongside Jason Dye. Those stories plus, it's Rivalry Week. The Jewel Shillelagh and the Platypus Trophy are on the line in the Pac-12.
And the biggest game of the year is this Saturday. All that coming up after this. You're watching Sports Talk on CFC, so stick around.
Starting off with last week's reviews, we kicked things off in the Big Ten. The Buckeyes had a slow start against Maryland, though they did score first and early just a minute and a half into the game with a 31-yard touchdown run. The Terps responded with a 31-yard field goal and another one from 21 yards to end the first quarter, trailing 7-6. Second quarter wasn't as kind to Ohio State, the Buckeyes adding 3 more from 33 yards, but Maryland added 7 more following a 1-yard touchdown pass to take a 13-10 lead into halftime. That lead wouldn't last long, the Buckeyes blocking a Maryland punt on the Terps' own 39, which set up an 8-yard touchdown run, and Ohio State is back on top 17-13. They added 3 more to that total with a 47-yard field goal halfway through the third quarter. Buckeyes crossed the goal line again to end the quarter 27-13. Maryland opened the fourth quarter with a 5-yard touchdown run, followed by a 2-point conversion to close that gap 27-21. Ohio State opened it right back up again with a 13-yard rush, 33-21, but the extra point was blocked, and Maryland ran it back for 2 to make it a 10-point game, 33-23. A 1-yard touchdown pass that had no business working worked. And now the Terps are within 3 with just under 10 minutes to play. Ohio State would go for it on 4th and 1 from the Maryland 42, but the pass was incomplete and the Buckeyes turned it over on downs, giving Maryland great field position, but Ohio State's defense held and their offense took over on their own 12 with 5:54 left to play. They took it down to the 27, but the Terps held the line and Ohio State had to settle for 3 from a 45-yard field goal to make it a 6-point game with 42 seconds left. The Buckeye defense got a sack, pushing Maryland back to their own 9. Next play, the ball is stripped in the end zone and fell right into the hands of the Buckeye defense. 2 steps and 7 points later, the Buckeyes remain undefeated at 43-30 as they head into the game. But take nothing away from Maryland, they showed up to play for sure.
They absolutely did, but with Ohio State defense, special teams coming up huge going into this week versus the team up north, we'll see.
Yep. The battle for Los Angeles was a hard-fought one and looked like an early upset with UCLA scoring first on a 1-yard run with 2:32 left in the first. The Bruins intercepted with 2 minutes to go and scored again with a 30-yard pass to end the quarter up 14-0. USC finally got on the board early in the second with a 6-yard quarterback keeper to close the gap and then closed it some more with a 35-yard field goal. Bruins up 14-10 with 5:46 left in the half. UCLA not done yet, a 1-yard quarterback sneak putting the Bruins up 21-10 with 3:48 remaining, but the Trojans responded with an 8-yard run of their own with 1:42 to go, UCLA up 21-17. USC got an interception, missed a 33-yard field goal wide left, got another pick, and this time the 49-yard kick was right down the middle to go into halftime with UCLA up by a point, 21-20, and looking for an upset. 5 minutes into the third quarter, UCLA kicked a 46-yard field goal that was called back due to a penalty that wasn't. Repeat 4th down, and they kicked a 46-yard field goal again to go up by 4. Strange sequence of events on that one. USC launched one from the 35 to take their first lead of the game with 8:50 left in the third. Trojans up 27-24. A 2-yard run just a few minutes later, and that gap widened to 34-24. Trojans picking up steam. UCLA fumbled on 3rd and 2, recovered it, and got the first down, setting up a 6-yard pass to pull within 4. Trojans began the fourth quarter with a 21-yard touchdown pass to make it a 10-point game again, 41-31. UCLA fired right back with a 55-yard pass and run touchdown to pull within 3. Trojans with a 6-yard run, and it's a 10-point game again, 48-38. A 3-yard pass, and the Bruins pull within 3 again, with 6:38 remaining, and those were the final points of the game. UCLA taking it to their crosstown rivals, but coming up short. USC going over 48-45. Neither team backing down, leaving it all on the field.
This is just what you want to see. Good heavyweight fight. Each team just trading punches. Great game.
Going right at it. Another Pac-12 matchup, Oregon hosting Utah, the winner of which would have a shot at facing USC in the Pac-12 championship, the Trojans securing their spot with the victory over UCLA. Oregon scored first with a 10-yard touchdown run early in the first. Then both defenses took over, and nobody scored anything until Utah kicked a 45-yard field goal with 1:15 left in the quarter to end it 7-3. Second quarter, Oregon threw a 4-yard touchdown pass in the first 5 minutes, then couldn't score again until 20 seconds remained with a 30-yard field goal to end the half 17-13. The Utes had a resurgence in the third quarter, beginning with a 14-yard scoop and score, closing that gap to 17-10. Once again, all the scoring happened at the beginning and the end of the quarter. Utah with an 18-yard touchdown rush with 2:40 remaining to tie it up at 17. Another early score in the fourth quarter, the Ducks kicked a 41-yard field goal to retake the lead 20-17, and that was the last score of the game. The Ducks are now front runners to take on USC in the Pac-12 championship, but they still have to get past Oregon State. They also have a head-to-head loss to Washington, so the Huskies have an outside chance as well.
Yeah, and the Pac-12 is wide open. It's just who's gonna face USC.
Yeah. Who wants it more between Oregon and Washington at this point?
Yeah.
The Beavers have no chance,
No.
which we'll get to, but they can knock Oregon out of it.
Right.
Sticking with the Pac-12 and sticking with Oregon, to start this week off, the Civil War between Oregon and Oregon State is a rivalry dating back to 1894 and has been played continuously since 1945. The Beavers have no chance at the Pac-12 championship, but a win here would push their in-state rivals out of contention and bring the Platypus Trophy back to Corvallis.
You know, like we said before, the Pac-12 championship is there for the taking.
Yep.
USC is already in, and Oregon can punch its ticket to Las Vegas with a win. If it loses, the door is open for Washington and Utah. The Ducks bounce back fast from a tough loss to Washington and a gut-check 2017 win over Utah. Bo Nix played banged up, but he's supposed to be ready to go after getting knocked around late. But it's the defense that needs to make the difference. Coming up with third down stops hasn't been easy, and the pass defense has been hit too hard at times.
Yeah.
But takeaways have been there with two or more of three. Well, what?
two or more.
Yeah. Of the three in the last 4 games and 13 in the last 6 games.
13 takeaways in 6 games.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah. Oregon State is 7-0 when running for more than 175 yards, and 1-3 when going over for that many or fewer. You know, I wrote this, and I still get mumbo jumbo. I'm just excited. For all of its faults and flaws, Oregon's defense has only allowed more than 160 yards once, 186 in the win over UCLA. I like Oregon in this game, 35-27.
All right. The rivalry between USC and Notre Dame has been called one of the fiercest in college football. Certainly not the fiercest. We'll get to that one later. But these two teams have battled over the jeweled shillelagh since 1926. The only things that paused that fight were COVID and World War II. USC is already locked into the Pac-12 title game, and the Irish will certainly play in a high-profile bowl game this year, so this one comes down to a simple us versus them. Notre Dame leads the series in the current win streak, and the Trojans would like nothing more than to chip away at that number.
Yep, and first and foremost, the Irish are going to run the ball. It's been easy to dismiss the season because the 0-2 start and a loss to Marshall and the inexplicable loss to Stanford always gets brought up. But the team is 8-1 in the last 9 games for a reason. The running game has found it. The passing attack hasn't always been consistent enough, but the offensive line has kicked it in, and a trio of backs and quarterback Drew Pine are producing. And it's getting stronger and stronger with 220 rushing yards or more in the 4 of its last 5 games. Notre Dame is 6-0 when it runs for 200 yards or more. UCLA has powered away for over 200 in thrilling 48-45 USC win, but it's more than just that, just like we talked about.
Yep.
The Trojan defense gives up 5 yards per carry, but most teams abandon the ground game to start throwing in an attempt to keep up the pace. The Irish have to keep running no matter what until that O-line breaks through. They are 8-0 when running for 38 times or more, and Stanford is the only team to run that many times, 45 in the 48-1-28 loss. against the Trojans. But enter Caleb Williams.
Yep.
He's already getting some good Heisman talk. He's now behind C.J. Stroud. Could this be his Heisman moment? Well, that would all depend on what happens in Ohio State, Michigan. But Caleb Williams is just that good. He had the performance that he needed to have against UCLA. Completed 75% for 470 yards and 2 scores, and 33 rushing yards and a touchdown. And now the Heisman might be his for the taking with one more monster game when everyone is watching. But USC is more than 13. Even without Travis Dye, no relation. The running game kept rolling last week. The Trojans averaged 5.3 yards per carry, and the line gives Williams a ton of time to work. And it's all meshes with a relentless style that will be impossible for Notre Dame to match. Only Tennessee averages more yards per game. No one is better in the turnover margin, and only Washington is more effective on third downs. Again, turnover margin.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame has forced multiple takeaways in 3 of its last 4 games, but USC has only given away 4 times. So I'm going to take the Trojan in this one, 42-34.
All right. Our final game this week, the only game that matters, the game more important than life itself. You think I went too far there?
No.
Okay.
No.
The Ohio State Buckeyes will host their arch rivals, the Michigan Wolverines, the last 2 unbeaten teams in the Big Ten. The winner will go to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game and will stay in the college football playoffs. Right now, the Buckeyes are ranked 2nd, Michigan 3rd, so victory here is crucial for both teams, not just for playoff contention or for a conference championship, but because both schools live and die by this game alone. The rest of the season doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is this game. Remember that fiercest rivalry in college football we talked about before? This is it.
Even for Ohio State, injuries at skill spots have been a problem. Obviously, I think I heard Trayvon Henderson's out. I haven't heard anything about Jackson Smith-Njigba, but they've got guys, they got depth.
Mm-hmm.
C.J. Stroud is still being C.J. Stroud, but the other stars in the backfield, Maya Williams and Trayvon Henderson, are trying to battle through leg problems, as I heard Trayvon out for this game. We don't know about wide receivers Jackson Smith-Njigba. His presence has been felt lost, but those guys can. Marvin Harrison,
Mm-hmm.
Julian Fleming, Emeka Mbuka, these guys have stepped up. It's been fantastic. And it almost took its toll last week. Again, it's Ohio State, so it all turned out fine in a 43-30 win over Maryland. But the 401 yards were alarmingly low at a point in the season when everything is supposed to be humming. Now the Buckeye offense has to deal with the number 1 defense in college football. The Wolverine defense is allowing fewer than 3 yards per carry. The pass D hasn't allowed anyone to get to 270 yards. And it's got enough presence in the backfield and is strong enough on third downs to keep the Buckeyes from clicking. On the other side, Michigan's offensive style should be a big problem for a team that hasn't exactly dealt with a slew of killer running games. With or without Blake Corum carrying the ball, the Michigan O-line should be able to blast away as the game goes on. The 168 rushing yards against Illinois was a better performance than it might seem. Turnovers aren't an issue with just 6 spread out over the first 11 games. But Rutgers, Nebraska, Iowa, Colorado State, UConn, and Hawaii.
In Indiana.
Right. Yeah. Michigan has faced 7 of the 35 least productive offenses in college football, and Michigan State isn't far off. Penn State, and it's a 37th best offense, is the most talented it's faced all year, and might I add, struggled. And Maryland is as close as it's been to dealing with a dangerous passing attack. It's Michigan. Like Ohio State, it has options if Corum can't go on his injured leg, but no, it's not Ohio State. The high-end star power isn't there among the backups to step in and shine like Dallin Hayden did last week for the Buckeyes against Maryland with 146 rushing yards and 3 scores. But the offensive line is really good. It's going to pound away, and Ohio State's run defense will have its rough moments. However, it's asking a lot for the Michigan passing attack to come through when needed. J.J. McCarthy has been fine but against a slew of mediocre teams over the last 4 games, not including Illinois. He hasn't been able to complete 60% of his passes. I'm sorry, but if you take away Blake Corum and force J.J. McCarthy to throw, it may not be a good day for the Wolverines.
Not when he's only completing 40% of his passes, no.
What worked against Nebraska and Michigan States of the world won't fly against the Buckeyes. This is a pressure leads to breaking Michigan offense. Eventually, the pounding takes over to the points, and the yards come in the second half. That didn't work against the great Illinois defense last week. It didn't help that Corum got hurt, and there's going to be a big problem if the Buckeyes get up early. Ohio State is already amazing, but what it takes on a whole nother level when it comes to a score to settle. Revenge factor. The 2020 team didn't sort of focus on all year on winning the national title, and it always wants to beat Michigan. But there was another thing. The team wanted Clemson after the pain and suffering in the college football playoff the season before, and when it came out rocking to a 49-28 semifinal revenge win over Clemson. This might be a national title level team, but to know anything about this program is to get that the last year has been all about getting Michigan out of its head. Michigan is very good though. It isn't going to get pushed around. Ohio State will get up fast and the Wolverines will fight back, making it interesting, and then Stroud and company will kick it in to exercise the demon known as Michigan early in the fourth quarter. I'm taking our Buckeyes 30-20.
Close one. All right, why don't you bring us into this week's top 5 then, Jay?
All right, this week's top 5, which will certainly change next weekend. Georgia's still number 1 and going strong. Ohio State at number 2, fighting Michigan at number 3 this Saturday, and one of those teams will be out by next weekend. TCU is still in the Big 12 leader at 4, and LSU will round out the top 5.
All right, and that's going to wrap it up for us this week. We hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving, and join us next week for conference championship games. You've been watching Sports Talk on CFC. We'll see you next time.